Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to For StarCraft 2 Strategy. We're having a Zerg fill day today. The video for our channel today is going to be covering Zerg, and then our Machinima video of the day is Zerg coverage as well. So all you Zerg fans should be quite content on today. So again, this is a Zerg strategy replay. I think I've already covered that. Our Zerg player in this video is Lush, and our Terran opponent is Satini. So go ahead right into the Lush Vision. Now what we're going to be looking at today is pretty interesting, something I haven't really covered before. What we're looking at is going for an Overlord drop with Roaches. Going to be a pretty strong build. There are a few builds that you have to worry about and make sure you scout for because you will be susceptible to these builds. Those two builds are Heavy Marauders and going for a really fast Banshee. If you see either of those things when you scout your opponent, if you see either of those things coming, you do need to be prepared to switch up your game plan because you're going to be in a really tough spot if they do that. We're going for heavy Roaches. Obviously, Marauders are a very strong unit against Roaches, so you're going to be in trouble in that case. And if they go for a fast Banshee, you're going to be in trouble as well. Now, this isn't so bad because you can get Queens to defend against those Banshees, as well as upgrading to that Lair to get that Overseer in case they go for a Cloak. But definitely, heavy Marauders, you're going to be really hurting. Now, if they go for a Marine heavy build, or if they go for early Reaper Harass, you're going to do very well because Roaches do well against both those units. A couple of neat little tricks here at the beginning of this game that I do want to discuss. What we're going to be seeing before that, though, is we're going to be going with that 14 Hatchery, and we're going to be following that up with the 14 Spawning Pool immediately after. Now, as far as those tricks, now everyone knows harassing Terran workers is really good because if you can kill their worker off that when they're trying to build the building, it's going to stop production of that building. Obviously that's good. Everyone knows that, though. That's nothing really new or going to be too informative for too many people. Another little trick I want to mention, though, is that if you saw earlier, we were moving our Overlord slowly in, just doing general scouting with our Overlord and moving it into his base. Now, something you do want to do is when you move in and you scout the cusp of their base, the very edge of their base, go ahead and pull out at that point. You don't want to unnecessarily give your opponent extra information. If you kept moving in with your Overlord and let them see the Overlord pushing in from this direction, they would know for certain that this is your base, because it's too early in the game for you to have wrapped your Overlord around from this direction or to have moved down that way. So pulling in too early, they're going to know where you're coming from. In fact, what Lelouch did in this video is he wrapped it around and is going to come in from this direction. Now that is going to make your opponent think that you might be over here. So just one of those little mind tricks, those little mind games. Also, of course, this Extractor trick, denying the refinery early on, that's pretty well known and pretty effective as well. So go ahead and try to do something like that. Don't give your opponent too much information, especially you don't want to let them know too much ahead of time because it's just going to put you at a disadvantage. Telling them immediately where your base is at the very beginning of the game, they're going to know immediately where to go for harass, and in fact, they won't even have to do much scouting if that's the case. But swinging your Overlord around and coming in from a different direction, kind of doing that little bit of trickery, that can be very effective for you. Now again, we did that 14 Hatchery, followed it up with a 14 Spawning Pool, going for that fast expand for that extra economy, and also upgrading to that Lair tech and getting those 2 upgrades for our Overlords to go for that Roach drop. It's going to be pretty gas intensive, so we are going to want those extra Extractors. Now we dropped our Roach Warren at 17 supply, and that was just after our first Extractor, which got dropped at 16 supply. Now, of course, we do want to scout our opponent. We do want to make sure that we have a good idea of what they're doing. We see these 3 Marines coming out, but that doesn't tell us too much. Whether they were teching up or going for a bio ball, getting Marines early on, it's going to be something they do. This is kind of what we're looking for, though. Seeing this factory in this tech lab, we can be reasonably sure that they are going to be going for one of two things, either upgraded Hellions or siege tanks. So just be aware that those are both possibilities and be prepared for those as well. Now we do have our first Queen out. We started building that Queen at 20 supply. I'm going to be getting a second Queen as well pretty shortly. I believe we start building that. There we go, 30. So at 33 supply is when we're going for our second Queen as well. Obviously, since we had this fast expansion, we do want to take advantage of spawn larva on both of these bases. And one Queen isn't going to have enough energy production to keep up with that. Getting another Extractor as well at 35 supply, and then immediately after, also getting our Lair tech. Now again, we need to upgrade to Lair so we can get those upgrades for our Overlords and go through with this Roach drop. Now, as I said early in the game, Roach is going to be really strong early game against Marines, also going to be strong against Hellions and Reapers. Marauders are where you're in trouble, so be aware of that. If you scout and if you see Marauder heavy, you need to be prepared to get some Marines, especially if it looks like he's going to be aggressive and push out. If you can wrap your Marines around those Marauders, you should do very well, but Roaches alone, they're not going to be enough for you. But if you don't, again, if you see something besides that, you can go through with this build. You can continue with this build because it's going to do very well. Once we get that layer up, of course, again, we're going to get those upgrades, those 2 upgrades for the Overlord, the speed upgrade and the ability to carry those units. Once we get those upgrades, as long as we can fend off any harassment from our Terran opponent, we're going to be able to pull through with a successful drop, and that's exactly what you're going to see here. We're also going to be getting that Speedling upgrade, just in case we do decide to transition into them. Speedlings are really strong at any point in the game, not just early game. In fact, some may argue that they're even stronger late game. They're strongest late game, because late game players are so spread out, they aren't as defended in every area that they need to be, and Speedlings being so quick and so devastating on the ground, they can take out economies, take out workers very, very quickly. Something you're going to see a lot of on this map as Zerg, or as anyone against a Terran player, is going for this tank high level high level? What am I even saying? Going for this tank on the cliff here. Tank on the cliff can really do a ton of damage to any expansion. As you can see, if you click on the tank here, this hatchery is well within the range, and it's going to be really hard for us to get to him, especially since he brought down these SCVs to drop these missile turrets. But we're not going to worry too much. We're going to pull through. We're still going to work with what we initially planned on doing, which was going for that Roach Overlord drop. And also, if you are getting harassed by your opponent like this, bear in mind that they may be a little distracted. You know, they're paying attention. They're trying to make sure that they don't lose this siege tank, as well as trying not to lose this medevac. Okay, I guess he wasn't paying that much attention. Almost lost the medevac there. But you know, you can go through with a drop like this, and it can be very effective. Roaches are going to do very well against everything pretty much but Marauders, and then obviously against those air units, they're not going to do so well. If you're dealing with Banshees, you're going to have to transition. You're probably going to have to look to get Hydralisks or Corruptors. For base defense, you're going to be fine with just Queens, but for being offensive, that's not going to do too much. So, as you can see now, both those upgrades are done for our Overlords. We're going to be loading them up and then pulling out. Not too worried about this. In fact, we're going to be moving an expansion to get it up here. Hopefully enable us to get to that extra economy without him scouting it. It's going to be very hard for us to deal with the siege tank up here, especially with those turrets. As you can see, moving into our opponent's base right now, going to be dropping those roaches, and it's just going to be a matter of seconds before they absolutely obliterate his workers. Not too much he's going to be able to do about that. Also, it's going to be a smart idea with the Overlords that you pull in with, get them out of range of any missile turrets or anything, but go ahead and do that spew creep ability. Increasing the movement speed of your roaches is going to help them be more effective against any units that pop out of any of his production buildings. Now, as you can see, that drop was a little too much for Satini to handle. He did go ahead and leave the game. Very effective. You know, he was going for a pretty standard build, a little bio heavy, but also working with that. It was initially a 1-1-1 build, and then he transitioned into more bio by getting these extra barracks. This is a pretty standard build. You're going to see something like this a lot. And as you can see, what we went for was very effective against that. So going for this, especially against a Terran player who is playing just off one base, this can be a pretty devastating drop. And again, it was enough for him to leave the game. So going to go ahead and go over that build order one more time really quick. We went with that fast expansion, again, going for that extra economy, and we need to be able to utilize these 2 Vespene geysers with those 2 extractors for that extra gas, because teching up to a layer and then getting both those upgrades for the Overlord is pretty gas intensive, so we do need those extra resources there. We followed up that 14 hatchery with a 14 spawning pool. Now at 16 supplies when we got our extractor, and then at 17 supply we immediately got that Roach Warren. Again, we do want to get that pretty quickly. That's going to help against those early Marine pushes. It's also going to help against any early Reaper harassment and possible Hellions you may be seeing. 20 supplies when we got our first queen. 33 supply, we went ahead and we got our second queen here at our expansion. Then we started upgrading to our lair. We got 2 more extractors at 40 and 39 supply at our expansion. Now, in dealing with this harassment, there really wasn't too much that we could do, especially with the build that we were going for. And instead of pulling over Overlords to deal with this, we just went ahead and went straight for that drop. Now, I do want to let you know, if you do want to deal with this and be able to move into your expansion, what you could do is just load a couple roaches up into one of your overlords, drop them right over here out of missile turret range, and then run them over. One overlord filled with roaches is going to be enough to move over and take out this siege tank without any problem. The only issue would be is if he has a dropship up here, he could just unsiege it and lift it up before you're able to get to it to do enough damage. But something to consider, that is of course an option. Now, right when our layer was up and we did have enough gas, we went ahead and we got those 2 Overlord upgrades. The one upgrade to carry and the other one to increase the speed. And then once those are done, just make sure you have a pretty decent handful of roaches. Go ahead and move out, drop on your opponent, and it can be very successful, as you see here. So once again, guys, this has been for StarCraft 2 Strategy. If you guys like our videos and you like what we're doing here, please do go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Keep watching and keep owning, guys. Luckily with these creep tumors, something that's very advantageous is that we do get a lot of vision of the map here. So spreading out our units in 2 forces, moving the Zerglings behind and then engaging from the back, that allowed us to get that vital surround. And I mean, as you can see, just that one engagement was enough to make our Protoss opponent call a good game.